What's my name and my role in the university? My name's Thomas Knowles and I'm a curriculum lead for English Child and Youth Studies and Philosophy. And I teach English literature and philosophy. I wasn't looking at the camera at all then, was I? Sorry. What did you want to be when you grew up? Goodness me. As a young lad, I was fascinated by nuclear science, believe it or not. And I thought I was going to be the person to crack nuclear fusion and save the planet from over-extraction of oil and global warming and all that kind of stuff. Turns out I didn't have much of a head for maths, so I went in a different direction. Who or what inspired you to teach your subject? Well, English literature was my first discipline, which I studied at undergraduate level and then did my PhD in. And I probably got the bug from a very young age because my parents were lucky enough to have quite a lot of books at home. But I really got the bug, I think, at secondary school. I had an English teacher called Mrs. Langley, who was really inspiring and managed to convince a young me that Thomas Hardy was where it was at. So, what's your experience in your field? Most of my career I've been an English literature teacher and lecturer, and in the last few years I've been more involved in course design, and so I wrote the BA English Literature course at Coventry University and the MA English Literature course, which has a real strong focus on environmental issues. And more recently, I've been involved in the writing and delivery of the new philosophy course at Coventry University. Have you been in the news? If yes, what for? Not for some time, but I was briefly in the local newspaper as an undergraduate because a poem of mine was published by the Times Literary Supplement. So that's my claim to fame. The poem's called Hope, which I think is an important virtue. What do I love most about teaching? I love the opportunity to find out where students are coming from in terms of their beliefs, their experiences, and the innovative ideas that they can bring to the different subjects that fascinate them. So all of the subjects that I teach in and that I look after are heavily discussion based, and so it's a real opportunity to bring together disparate ideas, different backgrounds, and I love being surprised by my students when they think in ways that I've not thought of before, and when they challenge me and push me on my own beliefs. What's the biggest myth about my subject? Well, if we stick to philosophy, I think that people who are not familiar with the subject might think that you study philosophy to acquire wisdom or knowledge. But actually, philosophy means love of wisdom. So it's about actually respect for and aiming one day to get beyond justified beliefs to something like knowledge. In literature, that any reading is allowable. It's true that you can take any position on a text, absolutely, but you need to be able to back that up with evidence, both evidence from the literary text itself, from the historical context, from the philosophical underpinnings of it, and from a theoretical perspective as well. So it's not that we would say you can't have that opinion, but it's not enough to just have an opinion. Okay, what's my teaching style? I like to think I'm fairly informal. I don't tend to stand and lecture for hours on end. It's more a discussion, and it's very much as important what I bring to the classroom is what the students bring to the classroom. and their experience of reading texts or thinking through problems are what would inform any discussion, as much as what I can tell people about what I've thought of those texts or problems and what others have previously thought about them. So interactive, I guess. Okay. Well, I've anticipated this one. Do your students just sit in lectures all day? No, they don't. We do have some lectures still in my disciplines, but even those tend to be interactive. Sometimes there's the need to set a little bit of context. So I might talk for 5 or 10 minutes, but it's always interspersed with discussion, with interaction, with activities. And the bulk of what we do in literature and philosophy is seminar and workshop based, which is student led, discussion based, activity based. What's my favourite course, module, and why? I think probably at the moment I'm most enjoying teaching my. It's a really long title, so I might need to just start that again while I remember it. Right, my module, Ethics of Climate Change and Interspecies Thriving, which is a bit of a mouthful, is really interesting for me because it's all about expanding our ethical domain to include non-human others. So it builds upon work that has tried to expand ethics beyond the family unit, or beyond the town or friendship groups or even the nation. So those that have looked at global justice, and it asks, what do we owe to those of different species? Does it depend upon consciousness? Does it depend on reciprocity? So if I act in an ethical way towards an animal and it's not able to act ethically in return, does that mean I don't owe it anything? And this, I think, has really interesting implications for what it means to be a human, especially in times of the climate catastrophe that we're currently living through. As a student, I'm worried about the academic workload. Should I be? Being a student is hard work, and particularly today because we appreciate that students often have caring responsibilities outside of their studies. And often have to keep part-time jobs to afford to be at university. And academic courses are and should be challenging. But there is so much support available to you at Coventry. And there is so much structuring of your learning on our courses that you will find yourself equal to that challenge with a little bit of application and effort. What's your favourite piece of kit you teach with? Gosh, we're a bit book-based in my subjects. We've actually made use of, in the New Delia Derbyshire building, the virtual reality headsets that they have over there. They have a new immersion studio, which is ideally suited to virtual reality experiences. And on my third year post-war literature module, when we look at science fiction, we do a virtual moon landing with students, which has been really powerful because the moon landings, of course, were all the way back in the 1960s, which is a different century to current students. And I think it gets across just what a momentous occasion those moon landings were and how they inspired and stimulated writing of that period. What difference do you think your subject area makes to the world? Well, both literature and philosophy are the most important subjects, bar none, I think, but I'm slightly biased. I said already that I think philosophy underpins all subjects, so every subject has an implicit philosophy, but philosophy is interested in making explicit those implicit things. And literature is fantastic because particularly in in today's world, it is available to everybody. I think it's storytelling and working out what is and why is just fundamental to the human condition. So both literature and philosophy are absolutely essential to that. In today's world, when we're facing kind of the challenges of climate change, global injustice, political uncertainty, it's through narratives that we can connect with one another and expand our kind of empathetic capacity, I think. What has your most successful student gone on to do? Well, I'm really, really proud, most recently, of one of my master's students who studied on the MA English Literature. Her name's Adi. Am I allowed to say her name? Her name's Adiola, and she came to us from Nigeria. She had a background in primary school teaching in Nigeria and was interested in children's literature. She wrote a brilliant dissertation on contemporary Nigerian children's literature, and she went on to achieve a funded PhD. Another of my PhD students recently won a scholarship to present at the Venice Biennale. So that's been really impressive. I guess that's enough example, isn't it? What would your advice be to your 18-year-old self when picking a degree? Gosh, it's young in a way to pick a course, and it took me a couple of goes actually. So I guess one thing would be to say, pick something that you're really passionate about, that you really gets you out of bed in the morning, that you can see yourself dedicating many, many hours to. And don't worry, this is going to be very off message for Coventry, isn't it? Don't worry too much about your career destination, because the sorts of skills that you'll learn in a degree are eminently transferable. And it's more important to have a passion and an interest in what you're studying than the goal of any particular career, I think.